sacred Dharug land and land that was devastated. Pay respect to elders past and present, acknowledge their sovereignty and their ongoing struggle for justice and self-determination. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of people here would share and understand. In memory of a father named Binyanga, who was also known as William Walter Green, a Dharug elder, he wrote, "Let the rivers run, let all people be one. I am a storyteller and a singer for people on country, Dharug country. Music and we are one." So Dharug land always will be Aboriginal land.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's event. And big thanks to Ms. Omar, Ben, Sujuta, and we've also got Kalani. Thank you for being here today, thank you for running, and thank you for devoting so much time and energy to the community. Again, big thanks to David and Larissa as well. I'm very honoured to be your MC today. I'll just give you guys a quick little introduction into why I'm so passionate about migration and the work that the Greens are doing as well. So, little background on me, I'm a human rights activist, I'm a counsellor at City of Light, and I'm also an architect. I design homes for people with neurodiversity. But I'm able to do all of that because of my refugee journey, and that journey itself did build so much resilience in me so that I could fight for change today. Before I learned to take pride in this journey, I searched endlessly for acceptance. A lack of belonging, it affects our self-acceptance. We cannot see ourselves fitting in or just being simply wanted to be around. We begin to question our identity and the decades of work our ancestors have put into shaping our character. This question, why did I do this, or why am I here? I bet you most migrants think that or question that at least once in their journey. Because the challenges that many face when they come into a new country, it can prove to be as horrendous or even more concerning than what they had to leave. To take a person's value of self away from them, to make a person question the quality of life they are entitled to accessing, to encourage a person to make it work in various different institutions. This is all an attempt to ensure that everyday usage of resources and habits are not potentially modified for the entitled, the privileged and financially powerful community members of the country. That's the only reason why we have to go through so much. And so this is exactly why the Greens policy is rights-based. It empowers minority groups so that we can balance out the scale of power, even if it's just a little bit. It fights for the right of people to make claims for asylum and have them fairly assessed, the right to be treated with dignity and respect, the right to complete our family and bring our parents and the people we love to join us in Australia. We will end the cruel offshore detention regime in Nauru. We will give thousands of people who are trapped in the system here for a decade or more, people that we know very closely here today, a safe and secure home, and we will make sure that there is hopefully an answer provided to everyone when they ask themselves, why am I here today? So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our beloved Senator Ben Shoebridge to speak about the policy of the state.
Thanks, Ed. I too want to acknowledge we're from First Nations land. And we're here to talk about immigration and fair humanitarian responses, but you think about the essential generosity of First Nations people of this country who will continue to welcome us onto their country despite the genocide, the violence and dispossession. I can't imagine the kind of generosity it takes and the strength of a culture it takes to do what Dharug people will do, or Gadigal people will do, and continue to welcome us onto their country despite the violence that this society has inflicted on them. So let's remember that generosity from First Nations people, and let's reflect it back with courage, with strength, and with solidarity. Because the land always was and always will be First Nations land. I really want to thank Tina for emceeing us today. Tina is one of our freshly elected star councillors. I'm actually in Ryde Council, and I've already seen the work Tina does on council. And if I was just to see one thing that the team has done in terms of reaching out to not just her community, but multicultural community, I think this was the first time council actually shut down the street and had a New Year's festival for Iranian and Persian New Year. And just the sheer joy that brought the community and to outreach on the council. It's amazing. That's why we have Greens councillors, and that's why we're Greens. So I would love to talk to you about our entire election platform as Greens. You know, how we're going to tax big corporations and billionaires to pay for the essential things and deal with the cost of living crisis. Tax corporations like Qantas, who paid, guess how much tax Qantas paid last year? Anyone want to guess? They had a record year, extra for zero. Qantas paid zero tax. You paid more tax than Qantas last year. That's pretty obscene. We want to make that fair. Make those big corporations, big gas giants, actually pay more tax than nurses and teachers do. And that's how we can afford the nice things, the kind of essential things, like putting dental into Medicare, making your GP for free, or building the public housing we know we need to deal with the housing crisis. And I'd love to talk with you about that, and we're happy to have that chat afterwards. But here, today we've come together to talk about our immigration policy and our refugee policy in the upcoming federal election. And we're really lucky to have 4 candidates who absolutely get it. And connected with their community and understand why the Greens have such a fundamentally different vision and future for this country in store than either Labor or the Coalition have. We see immigration as building this country. We see migrant communities, diaspora communities, as bringing essential connections and richness, cultural depth in this extraordinary multicultural city that we have of Sydney and country that we have of Australia. And we will reject what the Labor Party and the Coalition are doing in this federal election of trying to weaponise immigration. And if they see a crisis or a lack of investment, instead of blaming their own poor policies, they are trying to weaponise immigration and blame immigration for their own structural inadequacies and failings over decades. We reject that, and we will not allow multicultural Australia to be their scapegoat in this election. And as part of that, I just want to talk with you what our election offerings are, and what we say we will be pressing for when we get what we hope will be a minority government with Greens and a progressive crossbench in both houses of Parliament, able to force real change on the system. And each of the candidates will deal with some of these aspects in a little bit more detail, but I'll try and run across the overall package that we're putting forward. First of all, we say on family reunion and spousal visas. We say, and I think Tina touched on it in the opening, people have a right to complete their family. And particularly families bringing over grandparents, adults bringing over their parents who may be in their 60s or their 70s and their 80s, sometimes isolated, where the whole of the family is here. It's just mum and dad, your kids' grandparents, isolated, desperately keen to connect with their grandkids, connect with their families, complete the family. And we all know from our personal experience just how much that enriches our families' lives. When grandparents are there to talk with grandkids, to pick them up after school, to pass on cultural and family lore and values, and from a brutally economic point, to let mum and dad stay at work, and to add to the economic and cultural values that we have. But fundamentally, everybody should have the right to complete their family. And when it comes to spousal visas too, we should have the right to live with the person we love, to bring our kids over and complete our families. But unfortunately, under both Labor and the Coalition, the waiting times to bring parents over to this country is now 30 to 40 years.
Oh, shame.
A parental visa is 30 to 40 years waiting. $13,000 you pay for it and you wait 30 to 40 years. It's not exaggerating to say parents die waiting to come to Australia.
Shame.
And the spousal and partner visas, it's 3 to 4 years that people are waiting. Imagine 3 to 4 years to be able to live with the person you love, bring the kids over, connect your families. This is wrong. It's wicked that they are doing this. And we are committed to properly resourcing the department so that those applications are processed not in 20 or 30 or 40 years, but processed in 12 months. And so people can complete their families. And we see that as a fundamental commitment to multicultural Australia. And we cannot understand how those decision makers in the Labor Party and the Coalition think the current system is sustainable or fair. We want integrated communities, we want connected communities, we want people to be able to thrive in this country, and that's our first commitment in the immigration space.
Yay!
We've all seen how both Labor and the Coalition weaponise refugees.
Yep.
And weaponise the way in which Australia deals with humanitarian visa applications. And you know, the Labor National Platform has said the commitment they took to the last election was to increase the number of humanitarian visas Australia offers from 20,000 places to 27,000 places. They took that commitment to the last election. Guess what they've done? Zip. It's stuck at 20,000. They haven't even moved to their pathetic commitment of an extra 7,000 humanitarian places. We know Australia is, we know we're lucky to live in Australia. And we know that Australia is one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, with an ability to be an amazingly positive global citizen. Our position is that our humanitarian visa intake should increase from 20,000 to 50,000 a year. Much more in line with what Canada does, really matching Canada's generosity and matching Canada's actions as a global citizen. And we know that we can achieve this. And we also know that people who come to Australia, having sought asylum and have been granted asylum here, connect to this country in a way that is hard to replicate, because we offer safety, we offer economic opportunities, we offer the ability for their family to be safe and their kids to be safe, and the connections that people, when they're granted asylum in this country, are so deep and so strong. And we also know that people who have the courage to flee the countries where the violence and dispossession is happening, it's almost self-selecting for people with immense get up and go and connection. And we can think of the many examples of people who have come to this Australia as refugees and have built so much here and strengthened our community. This is not just a one-sided act of generosity from Australia. Imagine the people we could get here. Imagine the families and connections we can save and the connections we can make in this country if we have an act of generosity and increase our humanitarian intake from 20 to 50,000. And again, that's a policy we're bringing to this country. I know many of you have experienced Labor's betrayal of the thousands of people who have been trapped here on what's called fast track. The fast track system was put in by the coalition government to assess people who had come to Australia by boat and had sought asylum in this country. And there was a long wait list to determine those applications. And so the coalition government decided to put in place a fast track assessment process, which literally had people's asylum claims decided in 5 or 10 minutes. And you know, we've had cases where people have come to us and explained they put their application in to the coalition's unfair fast track system, their asylum application with maybe 100 pages of documents in. They put it in at 10 o'clock at night, filed it online in the department, and they had their refusal before 10 a.m. the next morning. Nobody could have read the application. Nobody could have considered their materials. It was designed to be unfair. And particularly for our friends in the Tamil community, there were refusal rates in the 80s to 90% rates of applications because the system was known to be biased and unfair. We worked with Labor. We worked with Labor to repeal the legislation that establishes fast track because everybody saw it was unfair. So we've abolished fast track. But there's now 7,000 people in this community who had their claims rejected under this unfair fast track process, living on temporary bridging visas, losing their work rights one day and their right to access Medicare the next day. And Labor has refused to put in place a process for resolution of status for permanency in Australia. It's cruel. There are people who have lived the bulk of their life here, gone to school here, made connections here, working here. You think of that, 12 years in this country on rolling bridging visas, your kids being born in this country, your kids becoming citizen, and you being told there's no pathway ever to make a permanency. We are committed to forcing a minority Labor government to put a pathway in so all 7,000 people in Fast Track have a rapid and realistic pathway to permanency so that they can complete their families here, they can have permanency here, and they can become a full-fledged part of our community. We want to make that happen in the first 6 months of the next year. There are just two other things I'll touch upon. I know that many people have watched how Australia has played such a negative role in our region when it comes to assessing asylum claims. And I put at the top of that our refusal to deal with some 10,000 asylum people who have sought asylum and are trapped in Indonesia. Many of them from the Hazara community, but from other communities. And they have been trapped in Indonesia for over a decade. Indonesia does not have the resources to deal with the claims. UNHCR does not have the resources to deal with the claims. And Australia has refused to process a single claim out of Indonesia now. And literally people caught in a cycle of poverty, of impermanence, their physical security is at risk, they don't have any economic pathways, and this comes about from a bloody-minded decision in 2014 from the Australian government to just say they will refuse to process any visa claims that come out of, asylum claims that come out of Indonesia. We know that that is cruel, and we know that that is wrong. We are committed to lifting that bar, and for Australia working with UNHCR, working with Indonesia to process those claims for Australia and other partner countries in the region as an example of how we can work cooperatively to help people seeking asylum in the region. And again, we want to make that change in the first 6 months of a minority government. I think it's essential. Finally, Australia has been teaching the world some of the worst lessons when it comes to immigration detention, both onshore and offshore. You know, in Australia, the average time someone spends in immigration detention in Australia, does anybody know what the average time someone spends in immigration detention in Australia is? Can I guess? If you go to jail, not because you committed a crime, but because your visa's wrong. How long do you think?
5 years?
2 years. 2 years is the average. There have been people in immigration detention for a decade or more, no pathway out. No pathway out. But the average time in immigration detention in Australia is 2 years. And did I tell you, that's not because anyone committed a crime or an offence, it's because their visa's wrong. Or they don't have a visa. And they're just held in a jail for on average 2 years. In the United Kingdom, the average time is less than 2 months. In the United States, which is having a pretty brutal crackdown on migration, the average time is less than 2 months. In Western Europe, the average time is less than a month that people spend in immigration. There's something wrong in Australian politics that is doing that. Deeply wrong in Australian politics. And Labor has made it worse in the last term. They've removed people's rights in immigration detention, allowed them to be searched by dogs without a warrant, allowed their mobile phones to be confiscated from them. Labor has been shameful in how it's been responding to people in immigration detention onshore. And they've just signed a contract with a massive multinational private prison corporation called MTC for billions of dollars to run a privatised immigration detention centres all across this country. What is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? We are committed to changing the law so the maximum time someone can spend in immigration detention is 7 days. 7 days. And so people are free and we don't have to ongoing. When it comes to offshore detention and those cruel detention camps in Nauru and previously in Manus Island in Papua New Guinea, do you know how much money we're paying to Nauru to manage offshore detention, to deal with about less than 100 people in Nauru and keep open those detention camps in Nauru? Any idea how much money we give to Nauru each year? It's in the order of $500 million. $500 million to deliver cruelty for 100 plus people. And this Labor government has just signed a new secret deal with Nauru to deport even more people based on laws that they ran through with the coalition at the end of last year, and they won't tell us the size of that bribe to Nauru. They refuse to disclose how many hundreds of millions of dollars they're paying to Nauru. And Nauru has made it clear that even though the people who are being deported to Nauru by the Labor government have all had valid asylum claims made, and been found actually to be refugees. Even though that's the case, Nauru has said anyone we send to Nauru under this arrangement, they intend to send back to the country where they came from. To face the persecution, the risk to their lives. How could a Labor government do this? We are committed to changing the law to end all offshore detention. So Australia lives up to its obligations under the Refugee Convention. There is a better Australia possible. And I know that across this amazing city that I live in, we all live in, there are millions of people who want a better future. They don't want us to be cruel to people's grandparents. They don't want us to lock people up for 2 years for no reason. And they don't want us to deport people into positions for obscene cruelty. We know that if this is communicated to the Australian people respond positively. Survey after survey says Australians want their government not to be cruel to refugees. There is a better Australia possible. This is the Australia we're all committing to campaign for. And I'm really glad that these 4 candidates are joining with us over the next 4 weeks to commit to that better Australia. Thanks very much.
Woo. Thank you, David. It's refreshing to hear a politician actually provide solutions for once. When you ask a Liberal or Labor politician or any other politician for that matter, any question regarding migration, refugees, asylum seekers, you will leave that conversation very frustrated. So thank you for that. I'd like to now introduce Sukhinda to introduce himself.
Hey. My name is Jinder Singh and I'm running for federal seat for Chief Whip. Let me start by acknowledging that we are meeting today on our own. It was never seated and it will never be. Let me also say thank you to the First Nation people for allowing me and my family to come and live in this beautiful country. And let me add on one more thing. I was never told by a First Nation person to go back to where I came from. It was always by another migrant who may have landed 100 years before. So it's their generosity that they are still suffering and we need to stand with them. With the immigration policy, from the outset I would say it's a broken immigration system we have in Australia. And it's more of a revenue generation system. They have wealth over there. They make more money. I'm not sure about the figures, but I would say next to the tax office, they are generating that much financial out of this immigration system. The immigration system of any country should be more on human values. But here they have made it a financial instrument. If you look at the family reunion, as a migrant, I have gone through that pain. I had to pay $50,000 to bring my father into this country permanently.
Shame.
So there are 2 main streams parents have. One which David Shoebridge mentioned, it will take 30 to 35 years to make a decision. And majority of the time, applicants die before they get a decision.
Shame. That's disgusting.
And children, look at their dilemma as well. They are in continuous pain. They can't look after their parents overseas. They are contributing to the economy of this country. And they can't bring their parents who invested all their wealth educating those children. In my country, I would say, I'm from India, my parents invested their super fund. So I am their super fund. I am their super fund. If I can't look after them, who's going to look after them? And I will be only completely psychologically in this country if my whole family is here. Otherwise, I'm half here, half there, and half living in the guilt that I can't look after my parents. So that's the one stream, 30 to 35 years. I'm not sure why you have it. So you live here 30, 35 years, and then we'll take a decision. And by that time, they may not clear the medicals.
Yeah.
There's a big. And the other category they have is called contributing parent visa. It costs generally about 50,000 to bring one page. So you have to come up with $100,000 in this. Look at the cost living, what is going on in the world, and you need to come up with 100,000 as a family to complete your family. So this is the dilemma a normal migrant is going through. With the immigration, we mostly come up with different terms. We now have a term called permanently temporary resident. So people are in this country for 10 years, 12 years, 8 years. They are on temporary visas continuously. They don't have any pathway to settle in this country permanently. And look at the ironies, the people who are making decisions, they themselves are migrating this country. They may have taken 200 years back. And now they are the decision makers. And the kind of decision they are making is not progressive. It's not creating a healthy society. There is a lot of mental issues because of these family reunion issues. A partner visa takes about 3 to 4 years. And in this today's world, if they are apart from each other 3-4 years, they may not have a relationship after. And how much it costs? $10,000 to lodge an application.
Yeah.
$10,000 to lodge an application to bring a partner. And if they can't get that $10,000, I have seen those people, they may wait another 1 year to save that much money, then wait 3-4 years to get them on shore. So, Greens is committing that they will provide enough funding to the Department of Home Affairs. First of all, it has to have a human base. It can't be a financial issue. Let's put it this way. Country is a community. It's not a company. So let's treat it as such. It's not a company. Mostly these days, Western democracies have started looking at the bottom line profit at too much. Everywhere they want to cut costs. If there's a public sector jobs, Dutton, respected Dutton sir, a little Trump, he is let's not bring him in. Let's leave him out and let's make labor act. That's the mantra I think we are working at. So if we say our Home Affairs Department is working as a representation, it will be broken forever. Human being is not an expendable commodity. Let's treat him or her as a human. Whether it's the refugees, we have seen David has explained a fair bit in this regard what they are going through in this country. People are left in a limbo. So, with the family reunion, Greens are committing, we will provide enough funding so that these parent visa application, partner visa application can be assessed and make a decision within 12 months. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar Seka, and I am the son of Lebanese and Turkish Muslim migrants. My mother was born in Tripoli, my father was born in Jayhar, Turkey. I was born in Liverpool Hospital, so I had a very different experience. I am a poet and an author. I work with an independent charity in Fairfield, primarily with refugee, migrant women and their children who provide multilingual art services. And I was the first Arab Australian to win the Prime Minister's Literary Award for Poetry, which is the biggest prize in the country. According to Dutton, believes my family should never have been allowed in the country. He said a few years ago that Lebanese migrants who came here during the Civil War in the 70s should never have been allowed. And so I'm familiar with the experience of racism in this country coming from the highest levels. I'm familiar with what it feels like to be ostracized. I grew up in a time when the Middle Eastern organized crime squad was a thing. They just openly targeted our communities and it was fine. I'm familiar with seeing police brutalize my community for no other reason than our race and our faith. There are many different problems that need to be faced in this country, and our approach to multiculturalism and human rights, it needs to be so much better, and the only party putting forward a better way, a way that respects human rights, is the Greens Party. That's why David talked about the humanitarian intake under Labour, the fact that they promised to let in 27,000 people on those visas and that they failed to do so. The world is in turmoil. We've never had a higher amount of refugees and displaced people since World War II. Okay, there's over 100 million people who are displaced. From Afghanistan to Palestine to Myanmar, Ukraine. It's really essential that every country, not just Australia, be more welcoming and understanding about the problems that people are facing and the fact that they need a safe home. I am particularly motivated by what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Syria, the aggression, the insane, absurd aggression that is the Israeli-American genocide and their theft of land. I have Palestinian friends, refugees who put on tourist visas when they came here, no entitlements. They've subsequently been moved to temporary bridging visas. So on top of the trauma of displacement and genocide, they've had to deal with this racialized, unequal and confusing bureaucracy.
Shame.
Something that Ukrainian refugees didn't have to experience. We should have a standard humanitarian visa, a standard approach. We're committed to raising Australia's humanitarian intake to 50,000 people a year. But at the same time, as we make these kinds of commitments, which are, I think, the bare minimum, we also need to do everything we can to divorce ourselves from the US military machine that's driving so much discord and displacement in the world, leading to crisis. I think that's really, really important because there's a kind of sickness to putting fuel on the fire and then welcoming the people fleeing the flames. Okay?
Yeah.
We need to just not be involved in it. And the Greens are also committed to ending AUKUS. It's a hugely important thing. This is such a vital election. So I urge you all to vote no for the Greens.
Firstly, thank you, Emma. That was so powerful. Really appreciate that. I'm Ben Hammond. I'm your Greens candidate for McMahon, which is right here in Blacktown, down in Fairfield. So the first thing I want to say about Blacktown is it's called Blacktown for a reason. It's called Blacktown because the Australian government rounds up Aboriginal people from around the whole country and forces them to be here. So we're here on unceded Darug land. They also pay respects to the Darug elders. They also pay respect to Wiradjuri elders and other elders from other cultures who were forced to come here. And they made this such a beautiful community, such a special place. So really just so much love to the elders for us. So the other thing I want to say about McMahon is that it is the seat of Chris Bowen. Chris Bowen, Nauru, Manus Island, that's blood on his hands, frankly. He built the cages, he did not one of them. So we have a very, very special opportunity with McMahon. We can say we want to keep Dutton out, and we want to get rid of Labor's self-serving, racist, anti-migrant rhetoric, which Chris Bowen really brought to the forefront. So, fast-track visas. I want to talk about fast-track visas. Over 7,000 people locked out of security. And we actually got an email this morning, my wife and I are going to tell a little story, from the Department of Immigration saying, congratulations, you have your interview on the 12th of May for your citizenship. Such elation, so happy, we have this funding seat, we know that it's all going to be okay. And it's just disgusting to think that the Australian government is choosing choosing to not give other people that same security. So we need to do better. We need to not only fix the system, we need to give people access to interpretive services. I've spoken to so many people in Toongabbie and Smithfield, that kind of area, from the Tamil community especially, who is trapped in this system. They don't have permanency. As they said, they lose one right one day and another the next day. And who knows what comes tomorrow. We need to give those people the security that everyone deserves. It's not fair that they'll want somewhere else. Therefore, they don't have the same rights as everyone else here. We need to increase those numbers. We need to bring more people in. As Omar said, the world is in a state of affairs. And another wonderful thing about Blacktown is if you walk down the main street here, you're going to meet refugees from the Sudan, from Myanmar, from Ukraine, Zara's from Afghanistan. And when I think about this future of Australia that we're talking about, I think of Blacktown. This is exactly what it looks like. People from all over the world who have fled or come here for so many different kinds of reasons, creating a community. And that's just a very special thing. So I'm really happy that the Greens are here in Blacktown of all places. And you know, we're making great strides. We've elected our first councillor here. And we're going to elect four. So we have a very special opportunity here. We can tell Chris Bowen we don't support what he's done. We don't want him representing us. We can keep Dutton out, and we can force Labour to do a little bit better. Just a little bit better, but ultimately we want to kick them out too. Thank you.
I'm Harvey, so I was working as an IT tech. I had no idea of the injustice that is happening in Australia because I didn't see the bribes and corruption in a daily life. So I was thinking that it's a much better thing. And after I saw Trump in 2016, that's when I thought, how could Clive Palmer become Prime Minister of Australia? That's how I was about that situation. That's when I started to know about politics. And as you know, if you are late to politics, you cannot make up things, you will not be confused. It's very straightforward. Anything that you look at a later point of time, with you will be very clear. So it was very clear of the injustice that's happening. And Australia is the only country with mandatory vote, preference vote, three-fourth vote, reimbursement of elections. Talk about it. No other country in the world has all these features. So that's why I got into politics. And I was a council candidate, now the Greenway candidate as well. And I'm happy that I could represent the constituency. So one thing we all know that the Labour and Liberals will work together without crossbench only when it is about demonizing immigrants or when it comes to protecting their homes. They are their masters. So these are the only two occasions that these two parties will work together against the entire crossbench. So often, I think the main problem, especially with Western Sydney, they say the last NSW state election was won because of this, because everything was clear Labour. And that it's like if 70% people, I think to just give an example, if an average student is given 100 marks, he's not going to improve. That's what people are doing by voting one to the Labour and Liberals. It's very simple, nothing more than that. We have preference vote, so it's very easy for us to vote one Green and then this, so that all these things can change. The main topic that I wanted to speak about was the detention centers of by Australia. People are stuck in it for years, and as David was mentioning, millions are getting spent. It's again follow the money. So you can see the guys who get all these prison agreements, detention centers, they pay huge donations to both the political parties, and they in turn get. So it's a win-win for them. They are able to demonize immigrants. They are able to get big money from as donations for the as far as Labour and Liberal, and the guys who give donations, they get huge contracts. So it's a win-win only for the parties and the companies which are doing it. We cannot look at human rights based on which country or which religion it is, and that is what we would like to change. And as part of green, our aim will be we will be closing all the offshore detention centers. It's a big take. We'll be bringing all the asylum seekers from the Nauru Islands and treating the people with care and dignity. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to spend millions as they do. For example, if you look over 150, they are spending 100K per year. Think about it. The kind of facilities they are running, full of abuses, human rights violations, all that the government is paying a minimum 100K per refugee. If this awareness gets to the people, then automatically people will change. They will realize how they have been fooled so far, or how they have been told the wrong things about refugees and immigrants, and that will automatically change people. So I have seen what kind of passion people show in protest, walking in for years. The Palestinian protest has been happening. For 100 days, people were asking to stop this fast track, to cancel the impacts or reduce the impacts of the fast track. They have already lost decades. All that we need to do is to get them to volunteer for Greens, make a difference. If we get anything less than 25% in this cost of living crisis, in this multicultural Western Sydney, then it's a loss for us. And I have no doubts with the passion that I have seen, that if everyone makes that effort, not only with them, but as a whole, if they come together, educate people about what kind of image Labour and Liberals are doing. It's not true, it's totally untrue that Labour is more refugee friendly. The Labour work together with Liberals to bring one of the most anti-refugee, anti-immigrant policies ever in Australia. People are not simply aware of it. If that awareness is created, we will definitely make a difference. All we are missing is that difference. So just give a break for a bit of break for the protest. Let's hold the governments in one. So if David Shoebridge, he has not had to write, he didn't have to struggle. That comes out of passion. Think about him in a much more powerful position, and that is what we are all working to do. So please make a difference and
very excited for all of you in the communities. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, if there are any. You mentioned a lot of different points today. Some heavy conversations.
I'd just like to say that Ahmed here has, from Afghanistan, he's an Australian citizen, and he's trying to bring his wife out to Australia. And I spoke to somebody who'd been working for the Immigration Department just a few weeks ago, and I said, look, how long is it going to take? He said, well, it can take several years. He said it shouldn't. It doesn't need to take that long, but that's how long it can take. And it just seems to me that surely you should be able to have, as David said this, you should be able to have your loved ones living with you. And is it because they are worried that the public will not support them if they support migrants more? Well, what's behind it? Why are they being so difficult?
Well, it's a good question. Why would you design a system like this? Yeah, it's because Labor is worried that they'll be beaten up by Peter Dutton if they let people bring the people they love into the country and leave them out. And they don't have the courage to defend their position. Like, I can't, if you imagine if you had all the resources of government, all of the ability to run education campaigns, to talk to the media, multiple ministers, and you change the policy to say you should be able to bring the person you love into the country within 12 months of making your application. If you can't win that argument, then why the bloody hell are you in government, right? And if you're scared of Peter Dutton weaponising that against you, then you don't deserve to be in government. But that's it. They're literally frightened. And in actual fact, it's unlawful. The Migration Act says you can't put a cap on spousal visa applications and determinations in a given year, because it's considered to be wrong to say people can't bring the person they love in the country. So there's no statutory cap, there's no official cap on the number of visa applications for spouses they process in a given year. But what the government instead does is they put a resource cap on, and they only resource enough bureaucrats to assess a certain number in every given year. And when they run out of resources, they stop processing applications until next year. That's why we say it's about resourcing the department. Because it's not actually a legislative cap. It's just an act of basketry in how they resource the department. We want to fix that.
And also, can you add the huge cost on families that Sujinda also referred to? Huge financial cost on families. That's, you know, families like your family, like my family, that have had to spend tens of thousands of dollars to bring family members out from, you know, sometimes really difficult situations, sometimes just, you know, adversity, trying to bring families together. And it's costing, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. Some of the families I know that have brought people out from Gaza have spent $75, $85, $100,000 just to get them through Egypt. And that's disgusting that they're making money out of people's pain.
I think the department is using, the Home Affairs Department is using all these as a financial instrument to make more money.
Yeah.
With the Gaza, I was involved in applying for so many visas. We do it pro bono because of the situation we're facing all of it. And we also applied for Ukrainians. I'm a migration agent.
Yeah.
So there were provisions brought for Ukrainians to facilitate their arrival in Australia. But there was no provision for Palestinians. So immigration policy itself is also a discriminatory process. They discriminate depending on which race is wrong and which country you belong to.
Yeah.
So it's a financial instrument, they're making millions of money, that's the stay forward. If a partner needs to apply $10,000, a parent $50,000. So it's nothing than a financial instrument to make a lot of money for the country. And it's not a human policy, it's a cruel policy. And labor and labor mostly have a cruelty contest with each other.
Yeah.
Who can rape people more? Thank you.
You know, in the first 12 months of the genocide in Gaza, from October 2023 to October 2024, you know, the Commonwealth government took more money from Gazans, Palestinians in Gaza, in fees for visa applications, which they largely rejected.
Yeah.
They took more money from Palestinians than they provided to support Palestinian refugees in Australia. They actually kind of profited in that space of the genocide.
Can I just speak briefly to that point about immigration policy, why it's so cruel, something we don't talk about enough is there's a kind of eugenicist belief underlying it where we don't allow disabled people, for example, to migrate here. And similarly, there's this view that with older people, for example, that they have less value. We reduce people to imagine an arbitrary productivity measure, essentially.
Yeah.
The belief is that they'll be a burden. This is disgusting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just this.
But it's also reflected in our aged care system here, which is so terrible. And we have so many elder people who are abused in those circumstances. And I think it's something we really need to address because there are so many benefits we all provide as human beings to each other, right? That it has nothing to do with our financial capabilities.
I just a word of hope on that. We can force change, right? For over a decade, people have been campaigning, particularly for kids who may have a medical condition or a disability who are born here. The government used to say that if it was going to cost more than, I think, 60 grand a year in medicals or support, including teachers' aides and others, that they would refuse a permanent visa even if the child was born here. Because of an ongoing campaign and a review, that has actually been forced to change. And so for kids, at least kids born in this country, we finally got rid of that element of cruelty. But, you know, for grandparents or anyone migrating or anyone born outside the country, even kids, they still price you. They price you. And if you're particularly if you have a disability, the wall is shut. Yeah.
And
there is
also-
hope we can make change.
And also for parent visa, contributory or non-contributory, the parents need to have 50% of their children permanent resident of Australia. So if you have 3 kids, 2 of them needs to be permanent resident of Australia, only then they are eligible to even apply.
That's right.
So my mom, she was in India, I had to wait 10 years. 3 of us, we paid 300K close to in our own visas. During the COVID time, she was alone in India, right? Because my sister and brother is still waiting for PR, even after spending close to $300,000. And now we applied contributory visa. We know, it's in 6 years, we have applied my mother's contributory visa, and we know we have to pay another $50,000.
And do you know what? If there are cases where people's parents have died on that list, community morbid about your family, and they take the money.
Yeah,
The department
they don't
keeps
give back.
the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Of course.
all.
It's all about money.
They keep the money.
What will happen to this broken immigration system you've been talking about if Dutton gets rid of 41,000 public servants?
And cuts immigration 25%.
Yeah.
We will be on the plane. We all will be on the plane.
No. One of the other things in our migration policy that I haven't spoken about is actually breaking up the Department of Home Affairs and returning it to the Department of Immigration, Multiculturalism and Customs, and getting rid of the border force and all the military paraphernalia, and returning it to back to what it was before that in 2016. And we think it is fundamentally important to change the culture in the department. I don't know if anyone's had the misfortune of dealing with the Department of Home Affairs, but it's like dealing with a kind of quasi-military sort of fascist bureaucracy. Like they're there to harm you, hurt you, reject you. We want to change that culture, and that means breaking up the Department of Home Affairs and returning it to a department which has got multiculturalism and immigration, so it sees it as an asset rather than a threat, and put customs over here and get rid of the paramilitary uniforms. If you've ever gone back and forth to the border of late, come in, you get greeted by people in like literally, like almost military uniforms who are very aggressive, rude, that doesn't have to be that way, and it wasn't that way when the Dutton made it. So, yes, if Dutton gets in, we'll be doubling down on that attitude, even cutting even further bureaucrats, which will blow out even more of processing.
Right.
I'd like to just quickly acknowledge we've got Sujan here as well.
There's a secret society in the Greens of Councillors where they all meet each other. You know about this. It's a dangerous connection.
7 years ago.
I have a last question, if you don't mind, to David. I'm with Sukhjinder in previously in the council, did a lot of campaigning, and one of the common questions that the people ask when we are door knocking or anything like that, it's like, well, Green has all these policies in plan. I know the answer, but I want to know from you, where are we going to get money from? I know the answer, but I would like to have like really articulated answer for that common question asked every single day.
The good news is we have a bunch of ways of making the system far fairer. I gave you one example at the beginning. How is it that 1 in 3 big corporations paid $0 in tax? And all those big gas exporters paid $0 in tax? It's because they are rigging the system. And they rig the system by donating to the Labor Party and the coalition, so as the tax laws give them all these looks. You know, the fact that pretty much everyone in this room paid more tax than Qantas, or probably, corporations like Apple rig the system, so they pay only a tiny amount of tax in this country. We want to make it fairer and tax the big corporations and the billionaires to make it their share. That's the first way we do it. The second way, I can come up with a way of saving $375 billion like that. Which is with Council August coming up. And sometimes when people ask me, well, how much money is that? It's hard to imagine what $375 billion is. It's so much money, it's you can't conceive of it. But here's a way. Imagine you spend $1 million a day, every day, for 1,000 years, and you still haven't spent $375 billion. It's an obscene amount of money. Imagine how much dental work we could get into that, how many school halls we could build, how much income support we could provide for people who desperately need it, how many houses we can build. So let's tax the big corporations and the billionaires. Let's make the fossil fuel companies pay their fair share, and let's scrap all this. We can do a bloody lot of this.
It's $65 billion a year, the IMF estimated our government subsidised the fossil fuel industry.
Yes.
Imagine that, that's an IMF figure for 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just mention one quick point.
Add that to the
last
list.
point maybe. Not to forget that our government is working directly with all those other governments that are kicking people out, that people are fleeing from and trying to seek safety in Australia. Why maintain those ties and those relations with those countries if you're refusing their aid?
Well, why don't we name it? And why don't we sanction the extreme leadership in Israel? Why don't we sanction the extreme leadership in countries like Iran?
Yeah.
Why aren't we actually using these powers to hold some of these regimes to account?
Yeah.
Oh.
I can't believe we're not doing that.
Easy answer to the Israel is two-way weapons trade.
It is
Easy. And every time I read that bombs are dropping on Gaza, I just think, oh, and the mechanism for opening the bomb drawers is made in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to say it's nothing to do with us, like, excuse me, but fuck me dead. They're made in Brisbane. What's that not to do with us?
Yeah.
We turn that thing from a plane into a weapon by opening the bomb bay doors.
Yeah. So it's made in Brisbane. And so when you're door knocking and people go, why are Greens supporting? You know, all this made in Australia is predicated on developing and manufacturing a weapons industry.
Yeah.
Do we want that for Australia? I don't want that for Australia.
And they want to build a weapons hub in Western Sydney near the new airport. So
Yeah. And they
Weapons
want to
manufacturing.
their transition from fossil fuel for the hunter is to put people developing weapons in Newcastle.
And exporting them into the round world.
Exactly. And they're weapons ready. Why?
Make
Because
profit.
they're being practiced and used in Gaza. And bloody Albanese was there holding one of those drones. They're made in Australia. Components are made in Australia. That's why we're not.
Discussions we need to be having in the community. We need to be fueling ourselves and the people that are close to us with all this information and encouraging them to speak up about it, because it's all of us that can help make that change. And I'm really thankful for your being here today. We can continue these discussions with Vicky and nice cup of tea as well. And another big thanks. Sorry. We'll do a massive vote as well. Another big thanks to our candidates and our programs.
From my team who's been super And can I thank our MC team too?
Just one last question about the fast tracking process.
Yeah.
What's Green's policy on it? Because there's currently two other parties taking advantage of the situation. If you can quickly just comment on that, where do we stand? Because I think we need to get that to the community and then get
Yeah, thanks, Sujan, and I hope you had a successful game.
We did actually.
Councillor to you, David.
Both Ben and I spoke about fast track and our commitment to ensuring all 7,000 people who are in our community, most of them here for 10 or 12 years, who are unfairly rejected by the Coalition's fast track assessment. We have a commitment to giving them all a pathway to permanent residency in this country. And security, they can work, they can study, they can access Medicare, and eventually become Australian citizens. That's our commitment on that.
Dream.